And you're listening to Communities Live on Sheffield Live Radio 93.2 FM with me, Susie Casson, and T-Boy. And we're joined in the studio by Hugo Boss from Renters Rising. Hello, Hugo.
Hiya.
Thanks for coming in. So can you tell us, first of all, what is Renters Rising?
So Renters Rising is a campaign to build a national union of private renters. We're run by renters for renters with a focus on what we call direct action. Basically, that means making things happen by ourselves instead of relying on politicians or landlords or other powerful people to do things for us. So we started in Bristol, where we were initially set up by this organisation called ACORN. That's the Association for Community Organisations for Reform Now. And we've seen a lot of success there, including things like stopping families from being forced out into the streets by bailiffs. But now we want to take things to the national level because we're facing a national housing crisis.
Yeah. So how did you first become involved?
Well, to answer that question, I have to go back a bit. So I used to be very unhappy. During secondary school, I became kind of fixated on this narrow idea of success that we're taught, basically what job you get and what university you get into. To me, grades were everything, and as I drifted away from friends and became more and more self-obsessed, I started to develop problems with anxiety and self-harm as well. Thankfully, I had family and friends who were always there to look out for me, and eventually I came to the realization, through their kind of intervention, that what really matters is community and what we can do to help it. And when I looked at the housing crisis, I saw communities being torn apart by decisions to raise rents, or to cut social housing, or to evict people from their homes. And when I found out about Renters Rising, after I arrived in Sheffield to study last September, I realised that by bringing communities together, I could help them by campaigning for tenants' rights. And I've been working on this campaign for a few months now, mostly focusing on communication stuff, and well, honestly, I've never been happier.
That's good. So a lot of people are renting, including, as you say, the student body. Mm-hmm. What are the main challenges facing tenants in rented accommodation?
So right now we're facing three main problems. So the first is costs. Here in the UK, we have the highest rent in Europe as a proportion of people's income. So people are paying half their income just on rent, which is double what's being paid in Germany and France. In terms of conditions, 1 in 3 homes in the private rented sector don't meet basic standards. That means they don't have things like working boilers, or they're suffering from mould, damp, that kind of thing. The third problem is security. So we have no protection from being evicted, with a huge rise in homelessness since 2010. 96% of that rise comes from people being evicted from their homes in the private rented sector.
So what is the rented sector like here in Sheffield?
Well, the rented sector here in Sheffield is the same as most places. It's doubled in size in the past 10 years. Some of that comes from students, but much of the rise comes from families as well. It's not as expensive in terms of money in places like London, but because wages are lower here, as a proportion of people's income, it's really just as expensive, and conditions and security are really just as bad as in the rest of the country, to be honest.
Yeah. So Renters Rising is seeking to support people in rented accommodation. What kind of events are you involved in?
So like I said, we're all about direct action, both locally and nationally. So for example, we're in the process right now of investigating some dodgy landlords here in Sheffield, which we might take action on. We've also taken national action against Santander's policies on buy-to-let mortgages. And apart from that, we also provide informal advice and support for renters through social media.
Right. And would you tell us briefly about Renters Rising's recent dealings with Santander?
Sure, yeah. I mean, so Santander had a clause in all their buy-to-let mortgages which forced rents up to the maximum amount that could reasonably be achieved at all times. We coordinated what we believe to be the largest day of action by private renters in British history, because we were outraged about this, with actions in 8 different towns and cities in England and Scotland, and, well, they agreed to remove the clause.
Right, well done. So there are a lot of renters and a lot of landlords in Sheffield as well. What can landlords do who wish to act more ethically?
I mean, there are basic things landlords can do, like fixing things on times and respecting the law and whatnot. And although we welcome any action by landlords to improve things for their tenants, at the end of the day, it's kind of up to them, and it's not really our focus. I mean, we're here for our tenants, not their landlords.
Yeah. So, What changes do you think would be most helpful to tenants sort of immediately?
Basically, join Renters Rising. Like I've been saying, we can't rely on powerful people, on landlords or politicians or whoever else to change things for us. We have to do things ourselves. But really, sorry, to answer your question a bit more directly, it isn't really for me to say. We decide together. Right now, we're aiming to support members wherever they are with whatever we have they're facing, whether that's stolen deposits, repairs, or evictions. We're here to help.
Yeah. And what changes would you most like to see in the longer term, say the next 10 years?
Well, there's things the government can do right now, or at any time in the next 10 years, like protecting renters from eviction with lifetime tenancies like they have in Germany. So right now in this country, the longest you can really expect to stay is 1 year. Or they can cap rents, which is another scheme that's been successful in parts of Germany. They could give more powers to local councils to go after rogue landlords. Or they could build more social housing. But again, at the end of the day, the most likely way we're going to make these things happen is to build this movement.
Yeah. So how can people find out more about Renters Rising?
So anyone and everyone is welcome in Renters Rising. You can follow our Facebook page at just Acorn Sheffield, #Renters Rising, or check out our website at www.rentersrising.org.uk. We're also having our first meeting for our events team tomorrow at 6:30 at the View Deli at the University of Sheffield Students' Union. Basically, we need two things right now. That's people and money. So in terms of people, no experience is necessary, and we're all about helping people who've never been involved in activism before. You can do whatever you feel most confident with, and we have a wide range of different things to do. In terms of money, again, it's totally inclusive, and there's no fixed membership costs, and we don't want to exclude anyone based on income. But yeah, if you want to help out, get involved with whatever time you have, whatever money you have possible, check us out on